My name is Elizabeth O'Donnell Gandolfo, and I'm a theologian and assistant professor of Catholic and Latin American Studies at Wake Forest University School of Divinity. This is the Architects of Hope series. Today, I'd like to share with you a little bit about Eduardo Galeano's Open Veins of Latin America, 5 Centuries of the Pillage of a Continent, which is a book that we study in my Latin American Liberation Theologies class at Wake Div. Eduardo Galeano was a prolific writer, a journalist, novelist, and poet from the South American country of Uruguay. His work is admired around the world, in the words of Isabel Allende, for invigorating the tired soul with his ferocious passion. Born in 1940 to a formerly aristocratic family of European descent, Galeano left school at the age of 14 to work. As a laborer in various trades, he was involved in union activities and eventually became a political cartoonist and journalist. He traveled throughout Latin America to better understand its people and their history. And in his literary work and his actions, he identified with and took the side of the oppressed, experiencing imprisonment, death threats, and 11 years of exile. Open Veins is one of Galeano's earliest works, published in 1971 in the midst of violent repression against grassroots movements for social transformation. It is a poetically written social, cultural, and historical narrative of the political economy of Latin America. It's a trenchant and passionately argued critique of the relentless capitalist extraction of Latin American land, labor, and natural resources by foreign powers from the time of Spanish arrival in the late 15th century to the time of the book's writing, nearly 500 years later. The wealth of nations, Galeano argues, the wealth of Spanish and Portuguese empires, the British and Dutch, and later of the United States, has been extracted from the human and natural riches of Latin America at the cost of the impoverishment of its people and the land. The immense wealth created by this global system of inequality generates and feeds off myths of development, progress, prosperity, and opulence. But Galeano reminds us that, in his words, the poorer countries on the capitalist periphery know that myths cannot be eaten. Poverty in Latin America produces premature death at every turn. The law and order that must be implemented to prevent the people from rising up accelerates the dying process. As Galeano puts it, there is nowhere more peaceful than a cemetery. So how is Eduardo Galeano an architect of hope? How could this book, which speaks of open veins, pillage, and death, offer hope in 1971 or today? Where is the hope in 120 million children in the eye of the hurricane, the title of his introduction? Where is the hope in the millions of indigenous peoples and enslaved Africans whose bodies were sacrificed to gold, silver, copper, and mercury mines? Where is the hope in the indigenous lands and agricultural systems that were and are sacrificed to export-driven agriculture, fueled by the lives and labor of millions more Black, indigenous, and mestizo laborers? Where is the hope in the Latin American liberation movements that time and time again, over 500 years, have been met with violent repression, supported in recent centuries by the US government in the name of tranquility, rule of law, and order? As a theologian, I would venture to say that the hope here lies in the prophetic nature of Galeano's work. Walter Brueggemann reminds us that a prophet is one who has the imagination to break through the veil of lies, tell the truth, and denounce an unjust, oppressive, and violent status quo, because the prophet is one who envisions and hopes for an other world characterized by relationships of equity, justice, and peace. This book, which was banned in several Latin American countries, which exiles hid in their babies' diapers while fleeing to safety, this book breaks through the lies, the illusions, and the apathy to tell the truth. And I quote, "Poverty is not written in the stars. Underdevelopment is not one of God's mysterious designs. It is the product of history made by human beings, and so unmakeable by human beings. There's prophetic hope in this truth-telling, myth-busting memory of the past because it is driven by and drives humanity towards a different kind of future. Many of us, like myself, who have read this book or are watching this video, are not of Latin American origin or descent. But Open Veins of Latin America can also remind us that the story of the Americas is one story of racist conquest, colonization, and exploitation. And so too is the struggle of the oppressed in the Americas, one struggle for resistance, resilience, liberation, and hope. Galeano challenges his contemporary readers throughout the Americas to become active protagonists in this struggle, dismantling systems of exploitation that place untold millions throughout the Americas in the eye of the hurricane. He concludes his 1978 update to Open Veins with hope in the future of this ongoing story, because he says, in the history of humankind, every act of destruction meets its response, sooner or later, in an act of creation. Let's be a part of that act of creation, and let's make it sooner rather than later. Thank you for watching. Please check back again soon for another episode of Architects of Hope from the Wake Forest University School of Divinity.